All right, let's get into it. Today, we're talking about a huge, hidden problem that's quietly putting the brakes on some of the world's most advanced economies.
We hear all the time about supply chains, about inflation, about all these big geopolitical issues. But what if the real thing, the actual bottleneck that's slowing down growth, is something we use every second of every day without even thinking about it?
Yep, you're seeing that right. The electrical grid, that invisible network that powers our entire lives, is now becoming a massive roadblock for the very countries that invented it.
So how on earth did this happen? How did the power grids in Europe and North America, these incredible feats of engineering, suddenly start running on fumes?
Well, for about 30 years, electricity demand in the West was, pretty much flat. Factories moved overseas, things got more efficient, and so the system just didn't need to grow. This led to what you could call a maintenance mindset. Just patch up the old stuff, keep it running, no need to build anything new. But now, that world is completely gone. Demand is absolutely surging thanks to power-hungry AI data centers, a flood of new electric cars, you name it.
And here's the kicker. Back when demand was low, the West offshored the manufacturing for all the critical parts of the grid. It just made economic sense at the time. But now, when we desperately need to expand, we're stuck in a global waiting line for the most basic building blocks. Things like high-voltage transformers, power cables, even the specialized engineers to install them are in short supply.
And make no mistake, this isn't just some minor headache, it is a direct hit to economic growth. So, let's take a look at how we can actually measure this new problem.
Economists over at Bloomberg came up with this really clever tool called the Electricity System Stress Index. Just think of it like a full-body health scan for a country's electrical grid. It looks at all the vital signs. Is there enough power to go around? How much electricity is literally getting lost in old leaky wires? What's the cost? It's the whole shebang.
And what they discovered is a brand new and frankly pretty scary connection for the world's biggest economies. It's simple, really. The more stressed out your grid is, the lower your economic growth. For decades, the G20 countries had it easy. Low stress, high growth. But now, that entire situation has flipped, and they are deep in the danger zone.
Now, this isn't just some abstract idea on a chart. To really see how this plays out in the real world, let's talk about one single company. You may not have heard of ASML, but trust me, its work is probably in your pocket right now.
Okay, so ASML is the absolute king of the entire AI industry. Why? Because they build the only machines in the world that can produce the most advanced computer chips. This company is so important that its ups and downs can literally shift the entire economy of the Netherlands. They are a true national champion. You'd think a company like that could get whatever it wanted, right? Well, think again. ASML is just one of 12,000 businesses in the Netherlands right now stuck on a waiting list for connection to the power grid. The country hit its 2030 energy usage targets already, and the system just cannot handle it. Even the giants are having to wait in line.
Okay, so while the developed world is tied in knots with its old infrastructure, a totally different story is playing out somewhere else. In fact, the solution might be coming from the places that have always had the biggest energy challenges.
You see, it's a completely different kind of problem. In the rich world, the issue is trying to fix a creaky, century-old system. But in much of the developing world, the problem has always been a basic lack of access to power in the first place. And ironically, that blank slate is turning out to be a huge advantage.
So these countries are leapfrogging the old centralized model. They're using something called distributed energy resources, or DERs. Forget about massive power plants miles away. Instead, picture small, local solar farms with their own batteries. These are called mini-grids.
To get a feel for just how big a change this is, listen to this quote from Manoj Sinha. He's the CEO of a company called Husk Power that builds these mini-grids. He says that before they'd set up, when he'd first arrive in a village, the first thing he'd noticed was the smell of diesel hanging in the air from thousands of little generators.
And after, it's a night and day difference. He says once their solar mini-grid is running, that diesel smell, it's just gone. The change in air quality and noise is immediate. But the economic change? That's where things get really exciting.
This slide tells the story perfectly. Look at this example of a carpenter in Nigeria. Before, using manual tools, he could make maybe a few items a month. But with reliable power for an electric sawmill, his output jumps by 10 times. All of a sudden, his problem isn't making things anymore. It's finding enough people to sell to. That's a revolutionary shift.
Now, imagine that carpenter's story, but scaled up across an entire nation. You get this incredible number. One study found that for every 1% increase in clean power access in Nigeria, the entire country's GDP could grow by almost 3%. This is way bigger than just turning on the lights. This is about turning on entire economies.
So what all this really shows is that the future of electricity isn't just some theory. It's being built right now in places like Nigeria and India, and they are creating a blueprint that the rest of the world really needs to pay attention to.
And they're not just building things, they're creating really smart policies. For example, Nigeria was one of the first countries to let these new mini-grids actually plug into the main grid, creating a system that's way more resilient. And in India, they're paving the way for people with solar panels on their roofs to sell their extra power directly to their neighbors.
This is a total game changer. The old grid was always a one-way street. Power flows from a huge plant to you, the consumer. The end. But this new grid, it's a dynamic two-way street where regular people become what some are calling prosumers. We can produce our own energy, store it, and even sell it.
Which brings us to this final, really fascinating question. As the developed world plans on spending trillions of dollars to just make their old centralized grids bigger, are they missing the point? Because the lesson coming from the Global South seems pretty clear. Maybe the future of energy isn't about being bigger at all, but about being smaller, more local, and a whole lot smarter,